Ghostbusters was a buddy picture, but not in the sense that usually means. I don't mean that it's about a couple of guys going through hijinks together. I mean it was a picture that came from people who were good friends with each other, coming together and making a huge movie. The same spirit that compels a bunch of friends to dress up in Star Trek costumes and film themselves at a Renaissance festival as if it was an Earth-like alien planet is the kind of thing that helped bring Ghostbusters together. Originally called Ghost Smashers, the film began in the mind of Dan Aykroyd, who along with John Belushi was one of the original cast members for Saturday Night Live. The two of them would adapt their double act to the big screen for the successful cult classic The Blues Brothers. But Aykroyd's idea with Ghost Smashers came from his family's history with the paranormal. His father had even written a book on the subject. Aykroyd thought about that in relation to his own field of expertise, comedy, and, noting the classic comedy ghost stories from decades earlier, in fact there are some similarities to the final script and the 40s film Spookbusters, well, what Aykroyd wanted to do was to have a modern take on that, mirroring what he considered a scientifically grounded approach to the paranormal with comedy, to serve as another vehicle for him and Belushi. They'd be from the future traveling to other dimensions, one of numerous working-class stiffs that worked as ghost smashers. Tragically, the hard-living Belushi passed away, and Aykroyd found himself unsure of how to proceed with the project. While with Saturday Night Live, the two of them had worked with a newcomer that replaced Chevy Chase on his exit, a man by the name of Bill Murray. Belushi and Murray had a bit of history, actually. Belushi had brought a number of Second City comics with him for the National Lampoon Radio Hour, and one of them was Murray. Another one was Harold Ramis. Ramis and Belushi in particular had worked together often at Second City, and would both work on National Lampoon's Animal House, Ramis helping contribute to the script, and Belushi's famous on-screen role as John Bluto Blutarski. Animal House was produced by Ivan Reitman, and thanks to its success, it allowed Reitman to direct his own comedy film, Meatballs, which also was Bill Murray's first starring role. Reitman brought Ramis in to help contribute to the script for that film as well, and Meatballs proved a success for all of them. The success for Ramis allowed him to co-write and direct the film Caddyshack, which he again did with Bill Murray, and proved to be another comedy classic and financial success. Because of the success of Meatballs, Reitman had the backing to try his next crazy idea, a film about the comedy team Cheech and Chong joining the army. But when the duo wanted creative control over the project, Reitman decided to rework it. He thought that Bill Murray would again make a good lead for this film, but he might need some persuading. So he approached Ramis, asking him to rewrite the script to star Murray and to co-star himself. Ramis wasn't known for his acting, but he did have some experience with it, so even though the studio didn't want him, Reitman kept him for the part anyway, even over Ramis's own fears that he wouldn't be up to it. But Murray backed Ramis all the way, making it a package deal. If Ramis wasn't in it, he wasn't going to be in it either. That film, Stripes, was a critical and commercial success, and notable for being a comedy which leads into an action film at the end, providing an overlap between the two film styles that would serve them well when they got to Ghostbusters. Elsewhere, there came a film that seemed made in heaven. It was written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the two men behind last week's Back to the Future. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, hot off the success first of Jaws and then of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It starred both Dan Aykroyd, it was his first film actually, and John Belushi. And that comedy film, 1941, was panned by critics. It did make money, but not much, although the importance of it, Spielberg notes, was the lessons that it taught, including his own personal humbling that helped him return with a vengeance for Raiders of the Lost Ark. But I'm getting off the subject. It was a big-budget special effects comedy, so it made Stripes all the more significant that it could put a war picture in the middle of its comedy and still make it work. That between Ramis and Reitman, the audience were engaged enough to go along for the ride the whole way. Aykroyd put Ghost Smashers aside when Belushi passed and went on to star in the successful comedy Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, who had joined Saturday Night Live as well. But after that, Aykroyd approached Reitman with a huge treatment for the film and asked if he thought the film could somehow be made. Reitman quickly knew that it couldn't. Adjusted for inflation, it would cost almost as much as all three Hobbit films put together. But he felt that Aykroyd was really onto something here. Reitman was always a big science fiction and horror fan and was excited at the opportunities that this treatment offered. Given the success that he'd had with Ramis, he was the one that was naturally leaping to mind when Reitman thought of help for him and Aykroyd to try to turn this treatment into a workable script, starting with Reitman's belief in focusing it on just one group that started the whole thing, making them university professors rather than blue-collar Joes, too. And because of his recent success with Stripes, Reitman was able to walk in and ask for $30 million to make this film and get it passed through with relative ease. One of the changes made was to retitle them Ghostbusters, but there would prove to be a weird wrinkle because of that. It so happened that Filmation, one of the big names in animation, including the Star Trek animated series, they had a live-action show called The Ghostbusters back in the mid-'70s and produced a scant 15 episodes and included a guy in a gorilla suit wearing a propeller beanie. You know, highbrow comedy. By the time they found out, too many scenes had been taking place with Ghostbusters in it in one form or another to really change the name, so Columbia ironed it out with Filmation, paying them $500,000 for the use of the name. When word came, after the film's success, that Columbia was looking to make a cartoon adaptation, Filmation jumped in and offered designs on how they would make it. Columbia passed, but Filmation knew one thing. They owned the name Ghostbusters, and Ghostbusters was very popular at that time. So long as they didn't take anything from the film, they could legally produce a Ghostbusters cartoon. Hence why the actual film adaptation would have to distinguish itself from the cartoon that they wound up producing, which featured a gorilla in a beanie again.
They decided to name theirs The Real Ghostbusters, because naming it not that piece of crap Ghostbusters cartoon was too long.
Reitman helped sell Ghostbusters believing that Bill Murray would be on board, but there was no guarantee. Murray's a bit eccentric, rubbing some people the wrong way, while praised by others as being a supportive presence for his fellow actors. That would prove a common trait on this film, and why these past relationships between the players helped contribute to the success of the film. Many actors, naturally, would like to have the best lines for themselves. But the three principles had all come up through Second City, where the unwritten rule was to give the laugh to your colleague. So on Ghostbusters, they would freely offer to give a line to one of their co-stars if it suited them better, or if they felt they were kind of drifting into the background too much. That way it would keep them relevant. It helped contribute to the ensemble dynamic that helped the audience embrace their characters. But as I said, Murray was no guarantee. He was interested, but he was a bit eccentric. On Meatballs, for instance, Murray was the star of the picture, but they didn't know for certain he was going to actually do it until the day of shooting. In the end, he did do it, but he used Ghostbusters as leverage to get the financial backing for his dramatic film, The Razor's Edge. Pressure was on, naturally, so Aykroyd, Reitman, and Ramis went off to Martha's Vineyard together and transformed the script. While they did change them to university professors, it still kept the spirit that they were doing a blue-collar kind of job, a stressful, hazardous kind of work, facing a problem that they only had a glimmer of understanding for. Aykroyd created a ghost in honor of his late friend John Belushi, and that one, Slimer, would become synonymous with the franchise. Ramis also got into the project, becoming so enamored with the character of Egon that he asked to play the role of the character in the film. Others are being considered for that, including Christopher Lloyd, actually, but Ramis won out and would again join with Murray in front of the camera. Aykroyd also created roles for some of his other friends. There was a fourth Ghostbuster present from the beginning of their business venture who was to be played by Eddie Murphy, but he didn't. Now, Reitman himself says that this isn't true, that the part was never written with Murphy in mind, but there are others who disagree. And also the fact that the role was substantially reduced when recast with Ernie Hudson, a relative unknown at the time, and who has lamented that a substantial amount of his role in the script was never filmed, suggests that it was intended to be for a larger star. Of the rest, some say that Murphy declined because of the filming of Beverly Hills Cop, but others say that there was a bit of ego at work. While this was an ensemble, Bill Murray's character was still the most central, and Eddie Murphy wasn't attracted to playing a smaller part when he was headlining his own film. But it did provide an important part of the dynamic. Aykroyd's character was the heart, Ramis was the brain, Murray was the mouth. It was Hudson's job to be the everyman, to ask what the hell total protonic reversal kind of phrases meant. Another part was written for John Candy, the neighbor Louis Tully. Candy was another veteran of Second City and had worked with them in 1941, Blues Brothers, and Stripes. But Ghostbusters wasn't a typical comedy, and Candy just couldn't wrap his head around the part, so he passed on it, and instead it was offered to Rick Moranis. Moranis had also been part of SCTV, where he and Dave Thomas's mockery of Canadian content rules with their Great White North sketches led to their own film adaptation. Moranis redefined the character of Lewis into a lovable nerd and frequently improvised his role. The female lead was certainly unexpected then, given the rest of the players involved, but Sigourney Weaver actually had a background in comedy, though as an actor rather than as a comic. But her reputation was naturally for seriousness thanks to films such as Alien, but Reitman was quickly impressed with her approach, including her willingness to act like a dog during the audition to help get the role. The other big obstacle was the fact that, while this was both a comedy and a supernatural work, it was the fervent intention of Aykroyd, Reitman, and Ramis to keep it fervently grounded. The one thing not to be laughed at was the idea of it, of ghosts and capturing them. That meant that the effects had to be convincing, a problem because at the time the big special effects house was ILM, and they were tied up working on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But former ILM contributor Richard Edlund was looking to set up his own special effects shop, and not only was Columbia looking for someone to do the effects for Ghostbusters, but MGM was looking for someone to do 2010, the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey. So the two studios agreed to jointly fund Edlund's company, Boss Studios, which proved such a success that Boss became the lead competitor for ILM for a time. Things were also helped because of Aykroyd's dedication to the look of the film, coming up with a variety of the initial prop designs himself and being specific on the type of vehicle to be used for the Ghostbusters Ecto-1. The end result of all that hard work was a film that was both a critical and financial success, and one that went down as perhaps the best comedy of that decade.